Samsung's Galaxy Z Flip 7 has been released to raving reviews, while its little sibling, the Z Flip 7 FE, has flown under the radar. We took these two flip phones and compared them side by side to answer the question: does the price of the Flip 7 FE justify the sacrifices? To find out, we took photos, played games, watched videos, and ran benchmarks over the last couple of weeks just to find out exactly what you're getting when you buy the Z Flip 7 FE. And we have a couple of complaints. Let's talk about it. Let's start with the design. At first glance, the Galaxy Z Flip 7 FE looks like a pretty standard flip phone. It weighs just under 188 grams and is 6.9mm thin when unfolded, that is. When folded, it becomes a chunky 15mm thick, which is typical for flip-style foldables. The aluminum frame feels solid, and the Gorilla Glass Victus 2 back should resist scratches well. However, the FE's design feels more square and blocky, at least a little bit, compared to the thinner Flip 7. Like other foldables, it only has an IP48 rating instead of IP68. Another thing we noticed is that when the phone is closed, the two halves are not perfectly aligned on some parts of it. It's a small difference, but enough to spot when you look closely. To unlock the phone, you can use the inbuilt fingerprint reader on the power button or facial recognition, and both options work quickly and without issues. The glass back on the Flip 7 FE is pretty slippery, and we wish Samsung would adopt a soft touch back like the ones on Motorola's Razr series, and that makes it much more grippier. Inside the main display of the Flip 7 FE is a 6.7-inch AMOLED panel with a 120Hz refresh rate and a peak HDR brightness of 2600 nits. It looks fantastic indoors and is bright enough for use under the sun. The screen is sharp and colors are vibrant, just like you would expect from a Samsung flagship display. That said, it's a little smaller than the Flip 7's 6.9-inch display, and the difference is noticeable when watching videos or gaming. At least it's a little bit noticeable. One big difference from the flagship Flip 7 is the cover display. The FE has a smaller 3.4-inch outer screen with a 700p resolution at 60Hz, while the Flip 7 offers a 4.1-inch panel with a high resolution and 120Hz refresh rate. The bigger display on the Flip 7 not only looks better, but also makes it easier to use with apps without unfolding the phone. The small screen is fine for quick notifications, checking the time, or using as a viewfinder for the camera. Camera spec-wise, both the Flip 7 FE and the Flip 7 feature a 50MP main sensor with optical image stabilization, a 12MP ultra-wide, and a 10MP selfie camera. Both of them can shoot 4K video at up to 60 frames per second. Photos from the FE look natural with good detail and balanced colors. Samsung's image processing is not overly aggressive here, so you do not get overly saturated or sharpened shots. They look pretty nice. Skin tones look natural and accurate, and the ultra-wide lens delivers consistent colors and decent sharpness too, though low light performance is just okay. In the 12MP mode, the FE's shot look a little bit more blurry in direct comparison with the Flip 7, probably because of different processing. In the 50MP mode, however, we can't tell the pictures apart at all. They are basically the same. One of the coolest tricks is using the cover screen as a viewfinder, which lets you take selfies or group shots with the main rear camera. This is a big advantage for social media photos, as the quality is much better than using the standard selfie camera alone. Video quality is solid as well. The camcorder mode, when you hold the phone at a 90-degree angle, is actually very useful for stable handheld recording. Stabilization is certainly good enough, and the microphones pick up clear audio. Both take really nice photos and are pretty much identical regarding this. So if the camera is the most important for you, you can save some money with the FE. Our Z Flip 7 FE is powered by Samsung's Exynos 2400 processor with 8GB of RAM and 128 or 256GB of storage. The Flip 7 comes with 12GB RAM and 256GB storage by default and an Exynos 2500. In day-to-day use, both flips feel quick. Apps open without delay, animations are smooth, and multitasking is snappy. However, things change under heavy load. In our test, the Flip 7 FE became very warm when running demanding games. Playing Minecraft at max settings saw the phone exterior hit 53 degrees Celsius after about 10 minutes, and performance dropped to a laggy 13 frames per second. Wuthering Waves stabilized at an average of 37 FPS on high settings after about 10 minutes on the FE. The Flip 7 can manage a stable 60 FPS with the same settings. Fortnite was the biggest disappointment. On epic settings with 100% 3D resolution, the Flip 7 FE averages around 25 frames per second and the game stutters noticeably. Even when dropping settings to low and enabling performance mode in Samsung's Game Center, we never got a stable 60 frames per second. The regular Flip 7 is able to achieve around 50 to 60 FPS with max settings and a lot less heat. Benchmarks tell a similar story. The phone's GPU performance is only about 30% slower than the Snapdragon 8 Elite in the Galaxy S25 Ultra, but the thermal throttling is severe. In the 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme test, the FE scores just 34% stability, meaning it cannot sustain peak performance for long. The 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme and Solarbyte test both show around a 40% lower performance on the FE versus the Flip 7. Battery life is a big weakness of the FE. This phone has a 4000 mAh battery, which is really on the smaller side. In our continuous YouTube playback test, at max brightness, the FE lasts 17.1 hours. That's not super terrible, but it falls well behind the Flip 7, which lasts a whole 26 hours in the same test. Charging speeds are also the same on paper, with 25 watt wired charging and 15 watt wireless charging. The Flip 7 FE has stereo speakers with Dolby Atmos support. They get loud enough and the sound is clean even at max volume. Mids and highs are detailed and clear, and bass is audible despite being a little bit weak. Overall, we're pretty happy with these speakers, but the Flip 7 is just slightly better in comparison. Let's talk about updates. Every higher-end Samsung phone now comes with a 7-year One UI update promise and might receive security updates for even a bit longer. That's much longer than most people use a phone and a big selling point. The FE ships with the Android 16 based One UI 8. The outer display is a bit of a headache. By default, you can barely run any apps there. Want YouTube or Spotify? You'll need to dig into Samsung Labs and mess around with settings and install an extra app. That feels unnecessarily complicated. The standard suite of Samsung and Google's AI features are on board. That's Circle to Search, Live Interpreters, Gemini, and Bixby AI, as well as image editing tools in the Gallery app. We were a bit let down by Samsung's version of Google's call screening, which lets you pick up calls and use your AI chatbot to continue the conversation or make a transcription for you. It's useful in theory, but in our experience it makes way too many mistakes while transcribing and completely falls apart if you try to talk in another language. One big omission on the FE is Samsung DeX. The USB-C port supports HDMI out, but you cannot use the desktop-style interface that is available on the regular Flip 7 on the FE model. We're going to be honest. Overall, the Z Flip 7 FE is a decent phone, but there's no world where it's worth saving $100 to $150 instead of getting the flagship Flip 7. Currently in Germany, where we are based, the price difference is under 150 euros. The FE model has great cameras, solid speakers and a nice internal display, but the Flip 7 is thinner, has a better outer display, significantly longer battery life and a nicer design overall. Unless the FE gets significant discounts, there's not really a point in buying it. If you're looking for a more budget-friendly flip phone and don't mind sacrificing some performance, the Motorola Razr 60 is an interesting alternative. Here's our detailed review and comparison with the Z Flip 7 FE.